Hi, my name is Elena, and I've been a liver flushing practitioner and guide for over 12 years. And I created this Facebook group, Excalibur Healing, where I teach my triple flush method. And for a lot of people who aren't familiar with liver flushing, the triple flush method is like a foreign language. So I thought it would be a good idea if I just started coming on here live to introduce myself and to talk about the method and to open this up for Q&A to answer some of your questions. So like I said, I've been flushing for over 12 years and I've helped dozens of people with liver flushing. The method that I use is modified after the Andreas Moritz protocol, which is pretty standard for most of you who have done liver flushing. That is the protocol that you've used. So that's the one with the olive oil, the citrus, and also using some form of malic acid to soften the gallstones, and then using Epsom salt to evacuate the bowels and to evacuate the gallstones. So with my work, what I have found over the last 12 years is that there are many modifications that can be made to this original protocol, just depending on your lifestyle, your current health, different things you have going on that require different ways of, manipulating the digestive system in particular. The timing of events can also be modified. So I think it's really important that we continue adjusting these protocols as time goes on, not to discredit or take away the work of the original protocol or those people who wrote about those protocols, but just to, keep up with the times, because the times are changing and what used to work for us 20 years ago just isn't working now. And that's the big reason why I feel the triple flush method was brought into my consciousness so I could share it with you. I don't feel that I created anything new. It's just something that needed to be brought into this reality, because doing a single flush at one time is just, it's not efficient enough. It doesn't keep up with the amount of toxins that we have in our environment. So it's really nice if someone can handle it to perform 2 or 3 flushes within one cleanse versus just the one flush that most people are used to with this cleanse. So I guess I could talk a little bit about, well, first of all, I want to mention down in the lower left corner, I believe, this is my first time doing a live, and I've never really watched anybody live on Facebook. So hopefully the things that I'm mentioning are correct. And, once we get more people coming on to watch, they can help me understand what's going on here. But I believe in the lower left corner, there's going to be 4 squares. And if you select those squares, you will be able to submit a question for Q&A. And I believe that will pop up so I can see it easier than just if you're typing it in the comments. And also you will be able to see links that I have provided. And so there should be a link to my website, which is going to have all of the information that you need to get started with this cleanse. It's going to have links to my YouTube channel that kind of go over the protocol step by step for those of you who aren't really good at just reading written instructions. It's also going to have testimony of myself with pictures. It's going to have testimony from clients that I've worked with, Google reviews, things like that, which I think is really helpful. So you can see other people who are going through this process. And it's also going to have a gallery of actual gallstones, which I believe the reason that I really wanted to share that wasn't to be gross. I mean, obviously, if you know anything about liver flushing, these stones are real. If you've done gallstones or gallstone removal, you know that these gallstones are real. There are a lot of skeptics who claim that this is a saponification that's occurring which scientifically means that you are coagulating a base with a fat, and that's how you make soap. And so they're saying that the ingredients used in this flush are creating what are called soapstones. And if, like I said, if you have experience, I've done over 60 flushes. And when you have that much experience, you start to recognize that there's something very special going on, and that these are not fake stones that are being created within a few hour period of taking certain ingredients. So the only people who I see making those claims are people who have never done this. And maybe people even who didn't get results because they didn't have the correct preparation. So there are several ways that we can know that these stones are actually real. And the first way is by observing the quantity of stones that come out with each flush. So most people will experience a little bit of gallstones coming out in their first flush or two, and then it might increase as they continue taking malic acid and changing their lifestyle, which is what this cleanse every single month will eventually motivate people to do, is to start making little changes and to learn more about, the timing of meals and ingredients in meals and, the quantity that they're eating. When people start to make those changes, the malic acid and the different timing, because malic acid occurs in a lot of different fruits. It's not just apple juice. It's not just the food grade malic acid powder that you have to use to break down these gallstones. A lot of things break down gallstones. Things like chamomile and dandelion tea, tart cherry juice, like I said, stone fruits. There's tons of different foods that can continue to break these gallstones down and keep them small, so that when you do ingest dietary fats with your meals, you will have a release of bile with each meal that will push these broken down gallstones out. And this is just how the body functions naturally when it's working optimally. And that's where we need to get back to once we break down these larger gallstones that have just been accumulating and, growing larger and thicker. The bile gets sluggish and thick when we're not taking care of ourselves. And that's where we run into this problem of a fatty liver and liver congestion, is that these gallstones literally cannot get through the bile ducts. So that's another thing I want to mention. A lot of people don't know that gallstones are actually formed in the liver first. And once the liver is so full of gallstones that it can't possibly hold anymore, it starts pushing them into the other organs. It starts blocking up all the bile ducts, the pancreatic ducts. There's all kinds of issues that come from this liver getting so packed full of gallstones. And another thing that people don't know is that over 80% of gallstones at their core contain liver fluke parasite eggs. So that, speaks to a whole nother issue, which my group on Facebook does talk a lot about parasite cleansing and liver flukes in particular. So these are all things that I address, especially with my one-on-one consultations with you, or I notice a lot of people come to me for the consultation and the coaching when they have already tried to do this liver flush, and they've either failed or they got really sick, or something just didn't go right, or they want to learn the triple flush method because it's just taking so long to get through this cleanse. And I'll say personally, my experience when I first started flushing, I read the book. I wasn't involved in any groups, or I wasn't getting any kind of coaching. I didn't know anybody else who was doing it. And I didn't realize at the time that I could have been doing this flush every single month, even though, the instructions said in the book to do it every 4 to 6 weeks. It's like, when you don't have somebody in your face telling you why, and you probably won't stick with it, because, let's be honest, doing anything every month for months in a row, without knowing why you're doing it or where it's going or really what you're even doing, it's pretty hard to stick with it. So for me personally, it took me 2 years to get to the end of my gallstones. And, that's another thing that I want to point out is that you will eventually run out of gallstones. And that's how you know that this flush is actually working. So it was pretty amazing. After 16 flushes over the course of 2 years, I did a flush and nothing came out. And I thought, wow, that's really amazing. Like, I wonder if I'm at the end of my journey. And the following month, I did another flush and the same thing, nothing came out. So by then, my health had improved so much. I had lost over 20 pounds. My skin was completely clear. I had really bad acne. I had really bad anger, just like flashes of anger, which is why I actually started doing liver flushing, was that I was dealing with like some really intense anger, and I didn't know if it was from being a stay-at-home mom or just the changes that my body was going through hormonally. I was nursing a baby, and just a lot of changes going on in my body. But this anger was just like, where is this coming from? And historically, throughout my healing journey, when I ask a question, I get the answer. And sometimes it doesn't always make sense. But, in particular, I found that anger, which was associated to the liver from Chinese medicine, was, a big reason of why I even got into liver flushing to begin with, because I made that little connection. And like I was saying, after 2 years of flushing, I noticed that these bouts of anger just were not happening, along with all the other health benefits I was experiencing. So yeah, you will eventually get to the end of your gallstones and you will have significant improvements in your health. So those are 2 ways that you can know that this liver flush is actually working. Another way that you can know, like I said, there are some links down where those 4 squares are in the corner, I believe the left lower corner. There is a link to my website, and I believe at the top of the website, you'll see like a tab that will take you to a photo gallery, and you can see all of the different results that people get from doing liver flushing. It doesn't matter if it's 1 round of oil, 2 rounds, or my full-on triple flush method. You're going to see pictures from different people of the results that they get, and all of these stones look completely different. Even in the same person, the stones coming out from 1 round to the 2nd round to the 3rd round, they will all look significantly different. And it's like, if this was truly a coagulation of the ingredients, then you would expect the gallstones to look the same, right? So it's pretty amazing. The naysayers and, the skeptics and even the doctors that will tell you that it doesn't work. I think it's so funny when some of my clients go into the doctor and they get a fatty liver diagnosis and they start doing this flush. They'll share with me their numbers, and then they'll go back into the doctor in 6 months and they're like, oh, wow, you fixed your fatty liver. What did you do? And then they tell the doctor, and the doctor will say that those are just soapstones. That cleanse doesn't work. It's like, you know what I mean? So anyway, I really appreciate those kinds of people who are in the group. And if you catch this live, you know who I'm talking to. I think that's so great. So yeah, I really just wanted to come on and introduce myself and start getting comfortable with doing this live format. It's not easy to get on here. I've been thinking about doing this for like a year. So I'm so glad that I finally pulled the trigger today. There are a lot of people in the group that I started here on Facebook. I believe there's a link to that group. If you're catching this on my Facebook page, make sure that you check out the Excalibur Healing Facebook group, because that's where you're going to find other people. I think there might be 3,000 members in there now, which has happened completely organic. I don't really share this with anyone. I think it's just a lot of, maybe Facebook sharing it or word of mouth or people inviting their friends in and things like that. And so I just thought, with 3,000 people in this group, I think I should get on and just start really explaining what this is, what it looks like. I want to share too, with my personal journey, it took me 2 years to get to the end of my gallstones. And like I said, it was because I didn't know that I could do it every month. I didn't know that I could do multiple rounds of oil. And so that's where this triple flush method is truly amazing, because I don't feel in today's world with how toxic it is that we have time to be spending on doing this liver flush for 2 years. Like, we need to heal like yesterday. So, with the triple flush method, I do have clients who have gotten to the end of their gallstones in 5 or 6 months, which is amazing. So, briefly, what that means is when you prep for this cleanse, you're softening those gallstones, you're breaking them down with some form of malic acid. And then after a few days of this, you're going to take a large quantity of fat with a citrus, and this is going to push out those broken down gallstones. So that is 1 round of oil. That's what I mean when I say that. And that would be, a single flush is what you would call that. So with the triple flush method that I created, you can do an additional round of oil 12 hours later. And then you can do an additional round of oil on top of that another 12 hours later. So it is pretty intense. I would say people who have no experience with cleansing or fasting, they're probably going to have a difficult time pulling off a triple flush. But most people can at least pull off a double. And, that's still going to expedite your liver flushing process twice as fast as if you were doing the single flush that was in the original protocol by Andreas Moritz. So, yeah, I think that's all I wanted to share for today. I'm not really sure, like I said, how these lives work, so I'm going to try to finish this one up, and I'm really happy that all of you are here. I can't wait to do this again and hopefully get some more people on. So yeah, I'm going to try to post this in the group if you didn't make it in time, and then I will try to come on live more consistently and hopefully get that Q&A going. So thanks for being here. Good luck on your healing journey, and we'll see you next time.